And so when you have a consistent way of values and you keep that in place inside an organization, then that becomes the commonality for everybody on the team. And so what Thurber had shared is how Sony took, like 20,000 people away from work 2 different days. And you think about that, that's a lot of money, 20,000 people away from work. Because they said, if we can get our people on the same page, rowing in the same direction, working together, productivity and efficiency will go up tremendously.
Welcome to another podcast of Tell Me More, where we talk about connecting, asking better questions, and just overall learning to be great leaders. Today, we've got Doug Dwyer. Doug is the president and chief stewarding officer of DreamMaker Bath and Kitchen. DreamMaker is a full-service interior remodeling franchise. Doug's calling and heartfelt desires are embedded to the company's vision and mission to serve and enrich lives with dignity, excellence, humility, and respect, while encouraging and inspiring others to do the same. The corporate mission is to glorify God, to be faithful stewards, and to positively impact lives. Doug is also the president and chief stewarding officer of God as CEO, which is a nonprofit faith-based organization with locations in the United States and Ghana, Africa. He and DreamMaker have won multiple prestigious awards over the years, and Doug and his wife, Gayla, live in Waco, Texas, and have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. Doug, it is great to have you with us today.
Joel, great to be with you today. Look forward to it.
This is fantastic having you. Just for background information, I started in franchising at DreamMaker Bath and Kitchen with Doug. So Doug gave me an opportunity. I'd been a pastor for 16 years. I kind of put my resume into a little bit of sales language to help me. But Doug being a believer helped kind of translate what I did as a pastor into that role. And it was a great start. I've learned so much for Doug. I really appreciate all the things that you've done for me over the years. And we'll probably talk about some of those today. So, Doug, in further background that was in there, Doug's family, his father was Don Dwyer, and Don Dwyer started the Dwyer Group, which is now Neighborly, which is the largest home services franchise in America. So I've heard lots of stories from Doug and his brother Don about going on vacation and having to complete a certain number of calls before they could go out and ski or something. And he's been in franchising literally his whole life. All the kids worked in the various businesses that their dad owned. And so business and franchising is a part of Doug's DNA. So, Doug, just tell us a little bit about that journey and kind of what you've learned over the years with a very unique position in life in business and franchising.
So I'd like to start out with a story that's my wife's favorite story of me growing up and working for my dad. I was about 12 years old, and we, besides having Rainbow International as the first franchise company, we had self-service car washes, full-service car washes, and a lot of properties, real estate, and apartment complexes. But he opened up a restaurant, a full-service restaurant called Mom Pa Kettle, and so my twin brother and I were the busboys, and my older brother was the cook. 2 sisters were waitresses, and the oldest was the hostess. So after about 2.5 months, my he's running all these things, and let's do this restaurant in between all this other stuff. So he finally hired a general manager, and I went to the general manager and I told him, man, I like working for you better than my dad. And he goes, why is that? I said, because you pay better. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, you pay better is what I mean. And he goes, well, I'm just paying you minimum wage. And I'm 12. So I go, what's minimum wage? And he explained that, well, it's a legal requirement. And so I confronted my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, what's up? Like, why were you only paying us $1.50 an hour when minimum wage was $3?" He goes, "Well, I figured it was really a one-person job, and I just split the pay between you and your twin brother to be the busboy." So one of the greatest gifts my dad gave us really was work ethic, right? Work ethic, thinking positive. The way we got to Waco, Texas is through an organization called Success Motivation Institution, or SMI for short. And so I remember him trying to pay me at 13 to listen to tape programs. And I was like, no way. and I usually like making money, but I didn't want to do that. And at 15, I had a hardship license cleaning carpets. And now I'm doing it for free. And I missed that opportunity to get paid.
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons to all that, right? But I'm extremely blessed that had a lot of opportunities. Yet there's a lot of pressure that can come to that when your father's achieving so much. So yeah, definitely grew up in the franchise space, working in our warehouses, picking weeds in the parking lot. I mean, really just started from the ground up to being a routeman, cleaning carpets, to finally selling franchises. 18 years old, from 18 to 22, I helped bring 100 people into Rainbow International Carpet Dyeing and Cleaning. And so that's, so people are telling me, I had some natural sales skills, but people had to coach me and train me on how do you do that. So those were all good benefits, Joel, of just getting started in the beginning.
I've never heard the story about the restaurant where all of you worked there. That's pretty
crazy.
And Doug, work ethic, man. So such a sad loss with the loss of your sister Debbie.
Oh yeah,
I've never experienced a woman like Debbie in my life. She is truly incredible. She used to literally run just everything at Neighborly, and it was pretty fascinating to, at the time, 7, 8 brands. I don't know when it was when she moved to Rolls, but we had a few, 8 or 10, I don't know. And Deb would still check every receipt that came through for an expense report. I found it fascinating because I would get calls. Hey, Joel, so-and-so, gave you a $30 lunch ticket. They ate a buffet in Vegas, and that goes above the, above the expense requirements. And I'd be like, wow, Debbie, you have time to look at all of that. And I think the whole family is the same way. You could always tell. I'd always know if Debbie was coming down the hall because it would be these little feet.
Very intentional. Yep.
Debbie's coming. She walks so fast. It was incredible. But yeah, what a great family. What a great work ethic that you guys were instilled in. And it's pretty.
Yeah, I think it's something that's missing largely in families today. And like we had one daughter that was real athletic and played basketball. So we did select basketball from 4th grade, to high school. And so she would work hard. That was a lot of tournaments, all that. And then our other daughter, she didn't have that. So in the summer, she had to get a job, and she went to work at Hawaiian Falls. And she was a lifeguard. And she says, after, I don't know, a week or so, that she's like, all I do is go to work, come home, eat, take a shower, and then do it all over again the next day. And we go, really? So welcome to the real world of work. And, not that they haven't been blessed in many ways, but I believe that one of the blessings we can miss as parents, and sometimes as leaders too, is understanding, letting people struggle, let them break through, give them a challenge, let them take it on, have enough confidence to have them take something on that, maybe you think they're not quite ready yet, but you need to take a little risk. And so I think it's important to do that, whether it's parenting or as a leader. There's always a step of faith you have to take to go to the next level. And I can even think of some recent ones in my life where I've done that with staff.
Well, with that, Doug, you've been you've had so much experience from selling franchises. When did you become president back then of Worldwide refinishing. When did you first become president of that?
So I became the chief operating officer in end of 1995, and then it was 1997 that I became the president.
That puts you about 20, 28 years old or so.
Right.
It's a pretty big task. So that's a long time. We won't say how old you are now.
I'll be 60 this year.
Right, he's got me by a couple of months, but we're right pretty much together there. So if you had to break some things down on what the biggest lessons you've learned as a leader, because you've been leading for a long time, and you had the privilege of growing up with a father was a leader, your sisters, of course, and brothers, and Dina became the CEO of Neighborly for a pretty long time. So tell us what you've learned. If you had to break it down, what are the big things you've learned?
I think one of the big things is that you always have to keep learning, right? So like I know more than I've ever known, especially in the franchise space, leading in franchising, and yet the world's dynamic. Now we have AI, so it's changing rapidly, more rapidly than ever, but you always have to be learning and curious and being willing to grow. And I think that's a critical leadership quality, at least where you have, there's leaders that'll use the authority, but they don't use influence. And so I would lean more towards using the influence, leading by example. And, one thing the Dwyer Group's known for, DreamMaker is known for, God, a CEO is known for, is leading with a written code of values. Now, what God had me do in 2008 is, read through the whole book of Proverbs and find out a verse for every value. And then it was 2015, he called me and my leadership team like, hey, nail it down to one verse for every code of values. And we did that in 2015. And so that's been critical because that attracts the right people, right? It attracts people that want to be on the same page, have prospective franchisees all the time say, I've never written mine down, but if I did, you captured it. And so I think, leading by your, setting the tone, setting the pace, but also building structure in like a code of values so that you're not having to personally, physically manage everybody, you're using structure to help manage people and build it. And I like, there's a leadership challenge book, and it talks about the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. And one is, model the way. One is inspire shared vision. One is challenge the process, right? One is encourage the heart. And the 5th one is enable others to act. And so those are all things that we need to do as leaders, regardless if it's it doesn't matter what role. It's a business, non-franchise, franchise, or ministry. Those all apply to effective leadership.
Let's talk about values a little bit, because so many organizations have, little values or something written, little statement on the wall or something that no one pays attention to. Tell us how important those values are, and what did they help you see as a way to grow your business and achieve results? How do values help us achieve results in our organizations?
Well, I remember, and it was 3 years after my father had passed away. He passed away in 1994. In 1997, we brought on a consultant called Marshall Thurber, and he studied under a guy named Edward Deming. And like, who's Edward Deming? Most people would not know. But Edward Deming was a guy that the Japanese hired to teach them, they thought, American business theory. He taught his theory of total quality management and all those kind of things. And
kicked the U.S.'s butt in auto manufacturing.
Yes.
Yes. In the 70s and 80s, if you remember, American cars were pretty unreliable, and the Japanese were high quality. So that all came from Deming. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the greatest awards given to manufacturing over in Japan is the Deming Award because of that fact. And then he came back to the leaders here, but he's going down a bit of a rabbit trail. But I remember what Marshall said is the fish stinks from the head first. So if you have something stinking downline in your business, you might have to look yourself in the mirror and go, oh, maybe this is an opportunity for me to grow. Kind of like when my son was I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And he goes, Dad, hey, come look, see how fast see how fast he put new shoes on. He goes, watch how fast I am. Because he believed in those shoes that made him faster. And so you just got to have belief. And so what Thurber did in 1997, he helped us create what we call the operationalized code of values, because we had the foundational code of values, what I call it here at DreamMaker. It is kind of like we believe in superior service, et cetera. And then the operationalized version says we live our code of values by treating others as we like to be treated, as one example. And so when you have a consistent way of values and you keep that in place inside an organization, then that becomes the commonality for everybody on the team. And so what Thurber had shared is how Sony took, like 20,000 people away from work 2 different days. And you think about that, that's a lot of money, 20,000 people away from work. Because they said, if we can get our people on the same page, rowing in the same direction, working together, productivity and efficiency will go up tremendously. So we've learned that from an outsider, but we've also learned it from experience that it really does work. But you have to have a system to keep the system in place. Kind of like if you and I were meeting today, and you remember when you worked with me, if we had 3 or more people, we would share a code of values that triggered, hey, share a code of values story, or what's your favorite code of values and why, or let's just read through the code of values. That helps you really multiply yourself through structure, not just your physical presence.
Because I think one of the things I see is even people that are serious about their values, they don't share them regularly. If we don't have that structure to share those values on a regular basis, communicate that, it never gets ingrained in the people. I remember the first day at DreamMaker, and we said the code of values in the operational version. There's probably 14 of them. It's a little bit of a deal, right? You're all saying all these values, and I thought, oh, that's great. And then I was in a meeting like 2 hours later, and we shared the code of values again. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. We already said those once today. And then I was in another meeting later that day, and we said the code of values again. And then I was like, my goodness, what if I joined some kind of cult or something? We're saying these a lot, right? The funny thing is, after 2 or 3 more days, it just became routine. Ultimately, I never had to learn. I never had to sit down and memorize those 14 code of values. By the time I decided I need to put them in order and be able to say them without looking, I didn't need to memorize them. I just needed to memorize the order because they were so ingrained. And then what I began to realize is, man, we use these things a lot here. We quote one of the values just in passing when we're talking to somebody. We quote one of them in a conversation with a coworker to reference what we're talking about. So, man, that structure is huge, and the communication of the values, I think, is really, really important.
Joel hadn't thought about some of this in a while, but there's I think it was 2001 or 2002. I was up in British Columbia at a training, and the gentleman who was speaking there was Vern Harnish, and he had just recently been on the front cover of Forbes Small Business Magazine as the small business guru. And he did the Birthing of Giants program at MIT, like all these. I've never attended that, but real brainiac kind of guy. And what he said about your values, your vision and mission, and repeating them. Here's his quote. He says, "When your people start to mock you, you might be doing it enough."
There you go.
It's hard to overdo it. And so your story actually, that's a great apostrophe, exclamation point. Like, hey, that's what it takes. It's not magic. It's systems and effort and intentionality.
And then those values became a part of the culture, a huge part of the culture. And I've heard the stories about why Dean and you guys hired that company is because the culture had started going a little bit the wrong way. And for years it was, man, one of the reasons I'm here is for the culture. When somebody, you get these headhunters all the time calling and offering you some more money if you come here or there. And there was always that, do I really want to leave to make more money when I'm in a place that has values where we respect one another? You don't have those arguments that I hear about in other companies where people are cursing people out and all sorts of crazy stuff. Just didn't happen because of the values. So yeah, that's a great one. You talked about the fact that, and as we talk about values, that you're naturally an encourager. You're not naturally the tough, hard, pull out the whip and start whacking everybody with it kind of leader. Tell me about a little bit of tough love, because the name of the podcast is Tell Me More. I talk a lot about connecting, helping people feel valued, significance, having a voice. And some people interpret, I think, my teaching every now and then of I'm soft, right? We're just kind of letting everybody get away with everything. Couldn't be more the opposite, but tell me a little bit about how you've learned to deal with that in your leadership journey.
Yeah. So what I've learned over time now, and we're learning as an organization with DreamMaker. Again, natural encourager, give people a second chance, third chance kind of thing. Have them really go for it. But to really help people be their best, we really have to have tough love too, right? So there's two sides of the coin of love, right? There's the nurturing, encouraging, tough love, and then or nurturing, encouraging love. And then the other side of the coin is the tough love, holding people accountable, which isn't easy. And people don't always respond nicely when you hold them accountable, because it makes them feel not good enough or not worthy, whatever trigger it hits inside them from whatever wound from a parent, from a teacher, from a coach, from a friend, a brother, sister, whatever. But what I've found is in looking at that, to get optimum performance, you got to have a good balance between. So if you have encouragement on one side and you have tough love on the other side, the middle, you want to be in the middle of the road, right? There's a good balance between those two as you lead people with love. Our theme for this year is to lead with love, but lead first. You need to lead. So there's a whole model developed around that to lead with love. To whom much is given, much is required. So as leaders, we need to lead well and mature people, or same thing as parents. There's a balance between the two. If we overdo one or the other, there's negative consequences.
Yeah, I was just reading a study that asked why people become successful. Why do some people grow up and no matter what they do, they achieve whatever success looks like? And it came out that the single biggest differentiator between the successful, the achievers, and the non-achievers is discipline. And that discipline is usually baked in by the time the individual's 3 years old. And I think our society today has interpreted love as acceptance. So love means we accept anything and everything that anybody does. But I think that I'm so thankful that my mom and dad said, no, that's going to hurt you. We love you. Stop it. In fact, I was old school parent and old school. I spanked my children when they were little. They didn't need spankings after they were probably 4 years old because they got it. But when I would spank them, I would say, why is daddy doing this? And of course, before we'd start, they knew the answer: because you love me. And I would say, okay, what does that mean? Well, you want me to grow up and be successful and have friends. And so that means that I need to act right. Right. So I think the same thing applies with people. If we really want to help people, then loving is not ignoring or passively letting things go by, nor is it getting angry and firing them. There's that balance of how do I really help this person by holding them accountable, helping them discipline themselves, and helping them take it to the next level.
I ran into another leader he's on the executive team of another brand that has over 300 locations, large organization, and I like the way he, put it. He goes, I want people to love what they love. I want people to know that I love them, whether they are here or not. Like, I love them as a person, value them as a person. Number two, I want them to love the work that they do. I want them to love working with the people they work with. And then the last one, I want, and I love you enough to tell you when you're not measuring up to the standards of the position or role, because if I didn't do that, that's not really caring and loving you to help you be your best and to keep your job. And so I thought, it was very humbling, just the way it all happened. Uh, it was just a humbling thing. Like, I learned so much from this guy. I wasn't expecting it. That's why it was humbling. I wasn't expecting such great wisdom to come out of him and how he's done it. So that's beautiful. So I think that we have to love him enough to tell him the truth, but we don't do it. One of our code of values, we live our code of values by speaking calmly, respectfully, without profanity or sarcasm. So we don't have to call them, names or, or even, jerk or whatever, loser. People use terms like that. It's like, that's not good. That shouldn't be coming out of our mouths. We need to build people, help them grow and say, you're really not measuring up. You're not getting what needs to get done. This needs to be corrected. Here's how we can help you with that. But what are you going to do? Are you willing to put the work in? Are you willing to do this? And be adults and ask questions and let them own it. And I don't have to stress out and have a heart attack because I'm stressed all the time with veins popping out of my neck managing people. Let them make an adult decision, whether that's an employee or a franchisee. You got a decision to make, and let them reconcile that and work through
it. And what do you feel about, we're in franchising, over 20 years, I've fired a few people, but not a lot. But love means that I want my franchise owners to win. I want my company to win. I want everybody at corporate to get their bonus. I want the franchise owners to build a successful business. So is it truly love when we accept bad behavior and poor performance from somebody on our team? I mean, what does that mean to our franchise owners? What does it mean to the rest of the team when we look the other way, when somebody's not pulling their weight and not really following our values, following our work ethic, whatever it is, not performing? When we look the other way, I'm not sure if that's really, we'd call that love.
To love somebody well takes risk. Right? You get risk that somebody's going to be mad at you. They're going to say bad things about you because you held them accountable and you're not perfect. They start wanting to point out how you're not perfect when you're holding them accountable. And so that's the risk we have to take. So it's, I think it was Mother Teresa, people will take advantage of you, but love anyway, so do it anyway. And it's a standard. We're not going to do it perfect, and time's not going to allow us to address everything. But we do need the majority of the time we need to be on it, addressing things. And there's other times where somebody's going through a lot of personal stuff in life. You might show grace for a period, but even with that, at some point, if they don't course correct themselves, you're going to have to call them to the carpet and accountable. Otherwise, you're going to continue to deal with bad behavior.
Values, huge in leading an organization. So it's not just about the financials and the systems and the models. Those values are part of those soft skills that make it all work. So I want to ask you about franchising in particular. You've done this for a while. What do you think are some of the keys that you found that really help your organization be successful? And your organization is only successful as the franchise owners who run the businesses. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that you found over the years or the keys to making that happen.
A huge key I've learned more than once is getting your franchisees involved. And what I mean by that is putting simpler things to start with would be like we use a lot of vendors, so we create a vendor task force. So they help find vendors. They look at vendors. We get their input about, is this a good product? See if they're behind it. See if it would get traction. Marketing, so we call it our MAP committee, our marketing, advertising, promotion committee. And so it's a national ad fund is what most people would call it. But unless you're really big, you can't really do a national campaign. It's more tools at the local level to help them be effective. And then you have technology is huge, another task force. So I would start with those, get people involved, because then, the fellow franchisees will get, if they're bought in, they'll help get other franchisees to buy in quicker with less effort and strain on the franchisor's part. And plus, they're going to make it better. You may have it 95% done, but man, that 5% that they added makes a huge difference. And other seasons, you may get more than half your innovations from the franchisees in the field. So now, and then when you graduate to the next level would be a franchise advisory council. But in all these, what I would tell you is don't start them unless you can be consistent with them. They take work. It takes time and energy. It takes planning. You're not giving them the reins to make decisions for the company, but you're giving them an advisory role. And so that's a tricky thing to navigate, that they feel heard, yet at the same time, they're not running the show. You're still running the show. But that's a delicate balance. And so if you haven't been skilled at that, it's going to take a while for you to get skilled at that and used to the finesse that it takes. And then the strength at times where you'd have to go, no, you're advising, you're not running this. And I've had to hold my ground more than once and correct that with a franchisee I love and respect. And they just went off the rails on what they thought how it was going to run. So, and in all that, again, it takes risk. So business takes risk. But I would say that's huge. If you're not utilizing your franchisees to be part of helping make your system better, this is a relationship business. It's not a corporation. And that is a huge, if you could just get that one thing out of this whole call, this whole podcast, if you're a franchisor, get people involved, even in your own company, your leadership team, get them involved to help come up with solutions. Again, time has to permit. You have to make time, but again, there's more risk.
And that's what this whole program is about. Tell me more. And that tell me more philosophy is about getting that input and that information, not only for better decisions, not better information, but also for that connection, right? To help people feel significant, feel valued, feel like they're a part. And that's where you get their heart and their energy. You talked about leadership challenge, touch a heart before asking for a hand, right? And when we just simply ask and let people give input, it's amazing the buy-in that you get from them. Very interesting, though. A lot of people are afraid of this for what you said. Sometimes they feel like they open up the door to now people feeling like they're running the show, or they gave advice, and now you have to follow that. Doug, you taught me the greatest question ever. And we used to, at DreamMaker, by the way, when I started, I'd been a pastor for 16 years, understood a lot about leading and influencing and dealing with people, obviously. But now it became formalized, and Doug put me in sales training, put me in, and I don't know why the fireworks are going off behind me, if you can see that, but I must have said something really good. The questions that we ask and through that training is the same thing that we can help people get through, helping them understand, because generally when somebody comes to one of these committees, and maybe they get everybody on board to come up with this idea that they think is fantastic, but maybe they're not seeing it from the franchisor perspective, right? Can we not just ask enough questions to help them start understanding why this may not be the best solution? Do you use that tactic in some of those meetings?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can lead by asking questions versus telling. right? And help them discover the solution and see the roadblock, or see what we find is franchisees, when they get on the committees, they don't really realize how hard the corporate team works. And when they start seeing behind the curtain and the amount of effort and energy it takes to help franchisees grow a business and follow systems and build systems and the proofing and the testing that it takes, their eyes are wide open. And that historically, what I find out is they are more appreciative and thankful. Like if you talk about the MAP committee and paying the MAP funds, they're like, they feel better about paying their MAP fees because they see all the work that's being done.
Yeah, there's so much upside to getting involvement. And I think that's what we're trying to say, is that if we just get people to be able to share their voice, we get so much energy, so much more buy-in from them.
It saves time. It actually saves time and energy downstream in the launch. The launch will go much more successful, less effort and time from the team, where if you just do it and push it out there, nobody's using it, and now you're having to sell them on it. And so it's less effective to try to do it on your own, not partnering with your franchisees. Strategic partnership, they're not literal partners in your organization, in your company, but they're strategic partners in building that brand.
Said over and over again, we get big ideas in franchising from the corporate side, from the top. If we don't have a great relationship with the franchisees, they don't believe in us, that great idea is likely never going to get executed among the actual brands that are touching the customer, that are creating the revenue, because they're not listening. And sometimes we create the atmosphere where our franchise owners don't trust us. They think we're out to get their money. They think they're, all of our policies are only good for corporate and not good for them, unless we do what you just said. Unless we bring them in, get them involved, listen to them, let them know we respect them. And again, they've got to respect us. We got to, trust is built on character and competency. You got to show that those values, that you're a trustworthy person and you know what you're doing. And once you get those in place, now everything goes faster because we come up with a great idea, or the franchisee comes up with a great idea, whoever, and we can put it out to the network, and with curious people who are going, oh man, tell me more about this new system. Tell me more about this new marketing program. Tell me more about this new software. I want to know. I can't wait to learn, because I have such a great trust and respect for corporate and what they're doing. And I think that's a big miss in franchising.
So Joel, one thing before we wrap up is that, selecting the right franchisees, nobody's going to do that perfect, but whether it's employees or franchisees, it's an oversimplified statement, is hire slow, fire fast. And I remember I was speaking in Africa and found out, the guy running television, he's a part owner of a television and radio station, is they have to move quick when talent's freed up. So again, these are gross generalizations, but the point is, really be clear about what type of person is going to be a successful franchisee. And the one thing we keep coming up with as we've elevated our systems, and we're still learning, like learning from other organizations. We're not just saying we've got it figured out forever. And so it's taken time and energy and risk, but boy, I love it. We're in our new system. It'll be the third franchise today. We have a review with the selection committee. There's 6 of us on that to review before they come to Discovery Day tomorrow. And we're, going through the recruiter, the developers, going through the score sheet, like, okay, how do they rate on, competitiveness? How do they rate on culture? How do they rate on humility? And we're finding humility and teachability go hand in hand. And so I don't want anybody that doesn't have a certain level of humility and teachability. If they want to show, and I've had some pretty painful experiences where I took a risk on somebody that was kind of pushing the envelope and pushing their ideas, not following our system, because I needed somebody that could innovate more. And this was outside of DreamMaker, but boy, it taught me it was painful, but it gave me great depth and breadth that doesn't work. You have to have somebody who will come in. They have to buy into your system, your culture, your plans, and how you do it. Otherwise, they disrupt it. And it's not just they're not growing. They're going to be part of a network of people at regional, at national conferences. And it just undermines the direction and momentum, right? We need to have aligned values. We need people that have aligned values. And I love an analogy that my wife and I heard a guy speak about it. And he was holding a glass of water, and he had somebody come grab his glass of water, and the water spilt on his hand. And he said, "What happened?" And they said, "Oh, you got wet." And then he goes, "Yes, I did." But what's more important is, if this glass was empty, I wouldn't have got wet. So what happened is a trigger happened, pressure happened, and what it revealed was what's in the glass. So pressure does not define character, it reveals it. So we need to be aware of, people that are bucking your system in the mutual evaluation process to become a franchise, or discovery process, whatever you call it, or the interview process to hire somebody. If they're bucking it on, that is a red flag to say, I don't care all the talent in the world. This needs to stop. And I need to wait on a better match, because it's not worth it to the organization to go through that. Now, I will say, sometimes I've had hires where I had peace about hiring somebody like that, and it was a blessing. And it was for a season, or a reason in a season. They helped shake things up. And I was 100% happy that I hired this person, and 100% happy that season ended.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So life is tricky, right? It's not always just one way or another. People that give you a lot of problems often are the best teachers of what you need to do to make your business better.
Love it. Getting the right people, and then creating the right culture through great leadership, right? When we understand how to lead well, and a lot of that through character and competency, through that trust, then we're not always just spending our time putting out fires, and this little group over here is on the warpath, so we got to spend all our time. Because I tell you, a lot of leaders spend all their time trying to convince the unconvinced or the unconvincible, not paying attention to the people that are doing it right, because you're always directing at something wrong rather than just having a great culture with, you're never going to win them all, but with the majority of folks, and being able to focus on the positive and helping those people move forward rather than always having to speak it to the negative. I think if you're bringing people on well, bringing on good franchise owners, and then creating that positive culture, you get that momentum where you're not having to spend all your time putting out fires, talking to the complainers, having meetings with the people who are upset at something. That's a great word.
Joel, for your listeners too, I'm always like, what credibility does the person I'm listening to have? Meaning, what credentials do they have? So I would, if you question anything that, like, well, is he really living it? Are they really living it at DreamMaker? We're not perfect. So 100% we're not perfect, but we are excellent in a lot of ways. And there's areas we're always growing and getting better on. But there's an organization called Franchise Business Review, which you pay thousands of dollars to have them survey your franchisees in 8 categories with 32 subcategory questions. And DreamMaker, for the last, I think it's probably been the last 5 years, we've been in the top 10% of that, so, and that's of people that are trying to be better and paying money to get better. So we're walking the talk. And then on the values one, they changed the scale, but it used to be a 1 to 5 scale. Historically, we would be a 4.8 to a 4.9. So culture, so we talked about culture, and leadership. Leadership would be 4.6, a 4.7, I think 4.8. We might have hit 4.8 one time. But anyway, it all matters. So measure yourself. That's another thing, is get a third party to measure you. That's going to help you make you better. if you're afraid of what you're going to get, well, then that's pretty telling. It's just tough, so all you can do is continue to get better. But if you can get that third party unbiased feedback, then you can really become excellent.
But we talk about that with the values and measuring how are you really doing. And man, I've had to ask people when they make these statements, I call them assumptive statements. Well, this is working great, or this isn't working great, or this is happening. And I just have to ask this little question. Are you sure? Are you sure? Well, yeah. Well, how? How do you know? Well, yeah, based on your feelings, based on your assumptions, but we don't have any real measurements, right? I was talking to somebody the other day about close rate in a service company. And he was saying, well, close rates, our close rate, we can't get that high because we serve a lot of, lower income people in this town, wherever we were in blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, how do you know? Well, because, I know we've got some good guys that are really good at offering financing, different things, and they still say no. Okay, to what rate? Have you broken the zip codes down? Have you looked at your close rate in those lower income zip codes as opposed to your close rate in the high income zip codes? No. So this is all an assumption. You're going off your feelings instead of actually getting some data. And I think that's great with our how are we doing as a franchise. Let's stop thinking we're doing so great. Let's pull the bell back. FBR, you can send us our check for this, Michelle. But let's just find out the facts, right? And then let's be honest enough to not make excuses for why the survey's wrong. Why? Well, they lowered, we got a low score on leadership, but no, you got a low score on leadership. That's the perception of your people. You're going to need to look in the mirror and fix some things, right? So never be afraid of the truth. So, and I know you guys, I learned to measure from DreamMaker and from Neighborly as a whole is you got to measure everything so you're finding the facts, not just going on emotion. Well, Doug, as we wrap up here, tell us a little bit about God as CEO. What is that all about?
Yeah, so God as CEO is really back in 2003 when I bought DreamMaker. I had a mentor who since passed away. He lived 107, a guy named Stanley Tam. And anyway, Stanley wrote a book called God Owns My Business, and that challenged me. So when I bought this company, I'm like, God, it's a full-time job running it and buying it's another job. And I don't know how to create a foundation and do all that's overwhelming. And so I promised God, I said, God, I will promise you I'll never name myself CEO. I will look to you as CEO as the true boss, the true owner. And then ultimately a year later, I took on the title Chief Stewarding Officer. So I'm the president and CSO or Chief Stewarding Officer, which is really doing our best to manage something on somebody else's behalf at their direction. And so God as CEO really is about the call to live with love, with excellence and truth. So are we leading with love and excellence in our personal lives, our business lives, grounded in God's truth? And are we doing that well? And so that's God as CEO is about putting that challenge out there to continue for us to get better and do better, glorifying God by how we love him, love others, and share what Jesus did for us.
That's awesome. And if you have a title of CEO, Doug is not against you. It's the principle of how God is in my business, and am I really submitting to him and seeking his?
It's more of a heart thing than it is a head thing.
Yeah. So I would just say, because I'm recently Doug's started some local things, and I'm involved in that. So just in the years to come, look for a God as CEO near you, so you can start helping bring glory to God in your business and in your community. And I tell you, your employees will love you for it. Those are great values that Doug has instilled in DreamMaker and in his franchise owners. And look, every franchisee may not be a Christian. Every employee may not be a Christian, and so we're not trying to force anybody into anything, but we're trying to follow God and love people in a way that would be pleasing to Him. So I'm more than thrilled to be on this side of things, and so excited that you've done this, Doug, and allowed yourself to be used by God. Appreciate it.
You betcha, Joel. Thanks. Great to be with you today.
I look forward to the next episode of Tell Me More, where we're going to learn to ask great questions, be great leaders, and take our businesses to the next level.